Maybe just for a quick intro, I'm Neil Tolaney. I work at a firm called Technology Crossover Ventures, which is a tech investment firm based in Menlo Park. Thrilled to be here today. My proudest accomplishment outside of...
Mike's not working.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for that. Hello, hello. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, that was my user error. So I was just going to say my proudest accomplishment outside of convincing my wife to marry me and having four children is graduating from Yale in 2004. The classrooms look a lot better. I can't tell whether that's because it's been 20 years or because I didn't go to class enough, but they look a lot better, very inspiring. And Mike and Jeff will introduce themselves. I try to get them to come out here in person by saying I'd buy them a glass of wine during the free happy hour. And they said, we are currently in San Francisco and LA respectively, and you gave me no less than a week's notice to do this panel. So we are very lucky to have them here today. They know one another well, so I'm hoping this will be very interactive. I have a set of questions that I want to make sure I ask them, but we should also make this interactive for you all and make sure we have a healthy Q&A at the end. One of the reasons that Claudia and I designed this session, there's been a lot of great panels and sessions and tech judging here today. Much of it's been focused on innovation in an early stage context, in product-led growth from 0 to 1. Mike and Jeff are here today continuing to have a very product-led growth focus, but doing so at scale of company, which brings unique opportunities and unique challenges to it. So we thought that would be a good complement to a lot of the sessions that we've already had. So thanks again, Mike and Jeff, for being here. I thought maybe just to start, it would be great if you introduced yourselves, give some healthy context on your background, your career path, and what brought you to Strava and LegalZoom, respectively. Maybe Mike, you can kick it off.
Okay. Hi, can everybody hear me? Yes. We're good? Okay, thanks. I'm Mike Martin. I'm the CEO at Strava. I'm excited to be here virtually. I think it was actually less than a week, for the record.
Yeah, no, I was trying to be generous to myself, but thank you.
Sure. So Strava is the app for active people. It's the largest fitness community in the world. And it is a product that many love to help them become better, more active versions of themselves. I've been in this role now for 18 months. Prior to that, I worked at Google. I worked at Disney and Nike and a number of other companies, all in product leadership and executive leadership roles across pretty much every category of consumer tech product. But the category that I love the most is fitness apps, because I believe it is both the most challenging category. It's really, really hard to get people to put their phone down and go and do a workout. But then it's also the most rewarding. By doing that and doing that on global scale, we can help the world be a healthier and better place.
Great.
So I'm Jeff. Neil also gave me, 48, 72 hours notice. Instead, Pepe's Pizza instead of a
Totally. Sorry. That's what my sales job is just like. I need to work on it.
Not impressive, Neil, especially because I lived in Connecticut. So I sort of think of myself as an academic gone bad. I was getting a doctorate, went to the dark side of business, started a company. That company got bigger, started running bigger and bigger companies, haven't looked back, kind of ended up being a bigger research playground for me than academia. And like Neil, I didn't like the classrooms either, frankly. Teaching in them or learning from them. I've run a handful of companies, probably most notably Web.com and Dun & Bradstreet. I've been at LegalZoom, which is another public company, for the last 9 months. I am the anti Strava. When someone uses Strava and gets hurt, they call us. And Ironically, the one thing that LegalZoom does not do is sue people. We don't have we don't have lawyers that do that, but we help entrepreneurs and small businesses start companies and grow them and build them, and customers on the consumer side get wills and trusts through our estate planning division. Company's been around for about 24 years. And one of the early employees, ironically, randomly in some respects, was Neil Tolaney. So I think in between Yale and his business school days, he was at LegalZoom. So Neil now sits on the board with me. I was originally on the board, and he somehow coaxed me to be an employee at LegalZoom because he said it was such a wonderful experience for him before business school. I'm not quite sure yet that he's right about that, but he pulled me back into the dark side, and I'm having fun with it so far.
Thanks, Jeff. You guys are still recovering from my contributions as an employee, so sorry for everything bad I did there a long time ago. So
I agree with recovering. I'm not sure I agree with contribution.
Yes, that's why I'm on the side asking questions, not giving answers to this. And, well, so you guys alluded to this. You guys both joined as CEO, Mike around 18 months ago, Jeff a year ago, recognizing you both had a ton of context in your background that led you here. You guys were thriving in you're both humble in how you describe your backgrounds, but you both were thriving in your existing leadership positions. So maybe you could give some context about what drew you to the opportunity, what you saw, and then conversely, what the challenges have been as you came in day one, despite, everything I didn't acknowledge about those challenges in the sale process. So
I'll start off on that. So building on my previous comment, what drew me was the challenge. So working at Google was great. My teams there had a great deal of success. But at the end of the day, this is the space that I'm compelled to be in. And I was especially compelled to take the role because I'm a longtime user of Strava. So I'm an 8-year user and subscriber of the product. And as a user, I felt like it always could do so much more for myself as a user, but then also for the planet as a whole. So I took the job to a large extent because I wanted to understand why, and then I wanted to do what I could based on my background to really get after the opportunity to take the largest, global community of active people and turn that into a positive, transformative thing for the world as a whole. What I found when I came here was a bit surprising. I was expecting, for a Bay Area tech company, what I like to say is it really is a tech company that's in the Bay Area. It really reflect and didn't have much similarity with how best of breed consumer products are built elsewhere. And that's become a very refined art, still with a lot of innovation in it, but still quite a refined practice. So I spent a lot of time transforming the team and the organization to one that could build a best-in-class product and do so with great velocity to be able to keep up with the always evolving needs and desires of the users. And then I applied my experience from engineering to making sure and marketing to making sure that we were finding the right audience, that they were aware of Strava, that they were coming on to Strava, and that we were serving them more effectively and specifically their data, because fundamentally Strava is a massive scale data product with the best in breed tools in terms of machine learning and AI.
yeah, great.
Yeah, so for me, I was just trying to find a way out of becoming CEO of Strava. So other than that, I didn't really think much about it. I had been running companies for about 20 years when in 2017 I ended up basically retiring from running businesses. My company was going private. I was asked if I wanted to be CEO, and I just didn't think I was getting enough from it or giving back enough. It felt a little bit too rinse and repeat, candidly. So I sat down with my partner in what was at the time a nascent venture fund and said, I wonder if we could build something around that, where we could really engage behind the scenes with other leaders and help propel their careers quietly. So in 2017, I left what was done in Bradstreet at the time, and transitioned into that role, and had been doing that happily, ever since. And was at the time on the board. Actually, I think I was chairman or executive chairman of LegalZoom at the time. And the company was doing well. We had just raised some outside capital from private equity, and were in the process of going public. And for better or worse, I was actually pretty happy with that role, helping others succeed and thrive. And what ended up happening about a year ago was LegalZoom fell into some challenging times. A large part of that were externalities. It was market forces kind of prevailing in the wrong direction. And I think as I've seen before, our team in probably the best case scenario gave up. In the worst, just didn't have the energy to fight against that grain, and basically said, we'll wait this one out. And for me at least, that's one of the things that's always bothered me in business, because I think I'm lazy inherently by default. I think most humans are. So part of the reasons why I left academia was at least what I was doing was quite hard, and business seemed really easy. In the area of medicine that I was focused on, you did something wrong, someone died. You don't really recover from that. In business, the only way to fail is to give up. And it always frustrates me to see entrepreneurs, leaders, CEOs, executives give up. So for me, I think like Mike, I was drawn to the challenge of others effectively giving up, or in this case, waiting, and said, well, that's just silly. So I think when the board asked if there was anyone who thought otherwise, I raised my hand and said, I think we got a plenty good opportunity. We just have to use the things that are within our control. So, for better or worse, I've learned now to keep my mouth shut.
Different journeys leading to the same place. So, yeah, it's great. Something that has been said a lot at this conference, either in the tech judging or assessment of company, is people talk a lot about moats. So it's like used almost constantly. How would you guys define that in the specific context of Strava and LegalZoom today? How do you refine it? How do you evolve it? And how do you make sure that you maintain category leadership within the context of that mode? Jeff, you just alluded to just taking advantage of what you have, sort of trying to make sure we're grounded in what that exactly is.
Well, I would probably back up before answering that question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And because you're right, you hear that all the time, and it's a very loaded term. And I think it's misunderstood and is a misnomer. I mean, a moat, a real moat, is a defensible position that you can't just win at, but no one else could thrive other than you. You will be so dominant that you can't help but win in spite of yourself and your poor performance. That's what a moat is. So most companies don't have real moats, real areas of defensibility. And it flies in the face of what most early stage companies do or are told to do. Kind of the old adage is you build a business plan, you show a hockey stick of growth, a massive market, the acronym is TAM, and then you go raise a bunch of venture capital and you toast to all the success you will certainly have. The reality is, what you want to do if you want to build a defensible business is the exact opposite. To hell with the TAM, the total addressable market. You want to create a serviceable market that only you can service. So what you're looking to do is find a market that is big, but an area within that market that is small enough that you can capture it and dominate it. So when we're talking about moats, that's what we should be talking about. And if that's only two customers, so be it. At least you own those two customers. You can build your company for scale around those. It will be a very small scale company, but it will be scale. So with LegalZoom, I hope I don't even have to answer that question. I mean, we are the dominant online technology-driven legal services provider. No one comes even close to us. We have more unaided brand recognition than all of our competitors combined. If we start selling shoelaces, we will never have a moat there. And worse than that, it will deteriorate our brand and what that positioning of the brand is for legal services. So, for us, our moat is very clear. I inherited it, luckily, and just reinvested in that moat by removing any areas of focus that didn't lean into that moat and into that brand ethos.
So building on that, I very much like Jeff's definition of that. Where Strava uniquely not just survives but thrives and others couldn't is in a confluence of three separate vectors. So number one, the most effective way to motivate a person, especially to do something hard, to not be lazy, to Jeff's point, is with another person. And the scale and the vibrancy of the Strava community, the fact that it is a positive, encouraging community, which has become increasingly unique in the internet world, is a substantial defendable position, because you don't want to leave the place where all of your friends are. You don't want to leave the place where you can get the positive encouragement that you need. The second piece of the second vector is the data. So the more you connect the data to Strava, and there's 120,000 API developers who have integrated in with Strava as a platform, the richer your view of your active life is, and the better we can help give you more guidance on how to be more active and how to progress. And the longer you spend with Strava and the more data you contribute into Strava, the less likely you are to want to go somewhere else and risk leaving that data behind. And then the third vector is the truly unique position that you have. Everybody else coming against this market is seeking to do so through monetization of other businesses, largely equipment businesses and the wearable and fitness device space, or content businesses where it's really about like training videos and stuff like that. Fitness is and will remain a fast evolving technology domain. There's still so much more that could be done in any given sport that you can think of. So it will your life in fitness will be one where you move from device to device to technology, and you want somebody who's there for that role. And so even if you were to look at the tech giants or entrenched players in this space, Strava is larger than all of them as it in its position, because no one else can have that universal hub sort of opportunity.
Yep. Yeah, well said. There's been another loaded term, as Jeff framed, and the definition of moats. Another loaded term used around here the last couple of days, which is product-led growth. Everybody's seeking that. What does that actually mean? How do you execute against that at scale? And how do the different functional areas of the company across product development, R&D, sales and marketing, and just general support complement that? Maybe Mike, we could start with you.
Sure. So the way that I define product-led growth is you are producing a product that is that much more valuable and excellent than anything else out there. And that by continuing to do so and then expanding the capabilities of that product, not just in line, but ahead of the needs of your consumers, you are serving their problems, you're serving their their issues. You're performing their jobs before they've even come to that piece, or to come to that realization. The way that you do that, in my experience, is you start with a best of breed product development organization. So as Neil knows, because Neil sits on the board of Strava as well, when I joined the company, Strava was a product that was well loved, but was not certainly not best of breed, and certainly not from a product standpoint, and certainly not developing at that sort of pace. So I made one of the first tactical or strategic decisions that I made was to not immediately fill the vacant chief product officer and chief technology officer roles. Given that my background is a mix of product and technology and business, I went deep with those teams to really understand how they worked, but more importantly, why they didn't work the way that I expected them to, and the way that I was familiar with. And then I transformed those organizations into ones that could build best of breed product, while at the same time recruiting a chief product officer and a chief technology officer whose primary attributes were they were even better at those jobs than I was. So having them in place was the key to really transforming Strava into a product-led growth business. And as Neil knows, some of the growth that we've been able to deliver in the last 18 months with new products and features has produced historic growth greater than Strava has ever seen in its 15 years of history. But then the last thing that I did across the rest of the functions is I had to reorient the company to really understand whether it's marketing or even the SG&A functions to recognize that the product team and the decisions that they make are the decisions for the company as a whole. The roadmap is our plan. And everything must come in to support and amplify that, as opposed to going into a different direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I can improve upon that answer. In fact, I was taking notes, so that was super helpful to me. The only thing I would add to that, which is just a segue, because we've gotten into a bit of a culture of technology arrogance. And you see this particularly in tech hubs, is just a reminder that product does not equal technology, and technology does not equal product. Product's a function of service and technology. It's where what you do touches your customer. And too many companies have fallen prey or fallen victim to building great technology that doesn't actually solve a customer's needs. And we certainly saw that at LegalZoom, where we were using technology to replace our expertise, and we have shifted now to leveraging technology to augment expertise. And I think that's going to be more and more important with the hyperbole around artificial intelligence.
Yeah, so perfect segue, Jeff, into AI. Maybe in conjunction with that tech arrogance, there's a lot of statements that 20-year-old companies, like you guys have today, effectively, won't be able to integrate AI fast enough to maintain category leadership, and AI-first companies will beat you to it. How would you respond to that?
You're probably right. Yeah, I mean, look, I guess it's 20-year-old companies like the people on the screen versus a bunch of 20-year-olds companies, the people in this room. And if history is any judge, whether it was the printing press or typewriter or computer, it's usually a combination of some amount of skill set that is beyond the newest technology being embedded by the most modern stack, and that modern technology being infused by what you have learned over the years about business and how to leverage technology. So I would fall back on my last statement and say that a lot of what these AI only companies are doing, and the technology is brilliant, is going to be absolutely useless. It's going to be garbage. That's the nature of venture. And venture capitalists understand that they have ratios of companies that should succeed and should fail, and ultimately that allows their portfolio to thrive. The old timers, both companies and people, are also smart enough to know that we can do the same. So I would argue that you're going to see those two modalities converge. And the way that they converge is we're gonna try to acquire, whether it's through knowledge and acqui-hiring or technology, the best and brightest. We'll try to build where we can, and we'll try to avoid the pitfalls of running an R&D experiment versus running a business. I mean, our business generates hundreds of millions of dollars in free cash flow. So in some respects, we're much better than ChatGPT. But in many others, including valuation, they're doing way better than us. But they don't make any money. So I'm looking forward to giving them a little bit of money to license their technology and others, so that we can leverage that technology without being so beholden to it that when the next one comes, we don't get replaced.
So like Jeff, I think there's a great deal of hyperbole in this space. And I'm not particularly interested in that or the novelty of it. In reality, the underlying technologies, even including the transformer architecture, have been around for really quite some time. So I think that and the other thing to recognize is similar to Jeff's points, like AI technology by itself does very little. What you need to have, but when combined with the right data at scale and with quality, I truly do believe in that situation AI can be transformative. And the way it can be transformative is it can solve problems, or it can be applied to solve problems that were previously unsolvable. And when you're able to make that combination, that's where things become really, really interesting from my perspective. The steps that I took here at Strava, so I came from one of the companies that was doing the most investment in this space, regardless of whether or not they had managed to bring consumer products to bear at that point. So I was deeply steeped and used to teams that just by their very nature reached for ML and AI technologies as their primary tools, as opposed to something like a chatbot that they would throw in on the side. I had to build those teams there. So to your point, Neil, I had to recruit and compete for that talent, which I was able to do so. And I would say that the size of the AI engineering team and product teams now are almost 12 times the size that they were when I joined. But then the other thing that I did is I also needed to augment on the data side our data science capabilities, and then have those data scientists go through our data set, which, to Jeff's point, one of the lucky things that I realized here is that the data here is at scale, but also truly proprietary. We're the largest repository of human activities in the world. There's 13 billion activities that have been recorded, with hundreds, if not thousands, of subsequent underlying data points. So it's really by combining those two things that we've been able to be as successful as we have. And as Jeff said, somebody just coming to market right now with an AI technology and then trying to solve real problems in this space is going to find that they don't have the data to do so. And that's the key differentiator from my perspective.
Yeah, great thoughts. Maybe moving to the softer side, but also the harder side, which is people. You both talked a bit about motivational issues amongst the broader org on your way in. And that's not to say there weren't motivated people generally, but there was a spectrum. And so I'm just curious how you guys have been able, truly, from my perspective, but also from the results, the evolution of that has been very fast. and a fast turn. I'm just curious, maybe for the benefit of everyone here, how you guys actually tangibly did that. What do you need to put in place in order to have those foundations of execution?
Jeff, do you
Mike,
want
want to take it first? Go for it.
Okay. I think the key thing that I did when joining was really just talk very directly to the team as a whole. And this was like day 2. I had all hands with the entire company. And as somebody who not only was experienced in this space in multiple different dimensions, but then also had been a long-term users, I just shared with them a lot of observations about where Strava was and where it could be, and then frankly where it wasn't. And that was a really challenging conversation for a good chunk of the team, but ultimately a massively transformative one, because a lot of the lack of urgency had come from misbelief about Strava and how it really related to the world. There were incredible assets and strengths that were here, but they were being misdeployed, and as a result, they were having limited effect as a whole. So I married that frankness and directness with something that I actually had picked up at my time at Google, which was a value around respect. And in this case, certainly respecting your colleagues and all of those things and respecting your users are critically important. But the respect that I was bringing to the forefront here was respecting the opportunity in front of us. And if the mission of Strava is to make the world more active, which is what the stated mission was, and even as the largest community at that stage, did they truly feel every day as they came into work and every decision that they made in the course of that day, that they were doing everything possible to bring that vision to life, to really respect the opportunity and what that meant to the population as a whole? And as I framed it that way, I think it became really clear to a lot of the people on the team that they weren't. And what that did is allow for to some extent, like a organic transformation, an organic cultural transformation of the company as a whole, where it effectively self-selected into two pools. One much larger pool of people who realized that this is kind of what they were waiting for. They came to Strava because they were passionate and they believed in Strava and wanted to see that vision come to life, but realizing through introspection that they had not been doing that and not contributing against that to the degree that they could and should, allowed them to recommit to a substantial degree. And then there were also, just to be frank, the second pool of employees who said, no, I came here because I enjoy the fact that, I could go and do multiple workouts in the course of the day and then just, achieve some of the tasks in front of me. And the first pool remains and is thriving, and the second pool has moved on and did so largely on their own accord.
Yeah, I'd say my experience with these, both LegalZoom and others that I've encountered, is very similar to what Mike is saying. I mean, I think it starts with ruthless transparency. A very healthy look at what your mission is, what your area of focus is, what your core is, and then just simplifying things. The bigger a business gets, the more crowded the mind share is. So I think it's just very, very important to simplify. So, for us, we were a larger public company. So the first thing that we did do is we did set about what we need to do. And, it started with stabilizing the business and focusing on that core competency to do it. Then making sure that we had a strong fundamental business model. So really one revolving around subscription economics. We had a diversified go-to-market strategy. And then ultimately we were leveraging our greatest asset, which was our core expertise in the legal services space. And, like Mike, I think that there was a large body of people who were waiting for something like that. It was refreshing because it was just so obvious. And yeah, the rest of the people tended to self-select out of the company, which is fine. It's painful. These are our colleagues and family members in many respects, but it was necessary. And then just changing kind of the cultural ethos to be one about winning, because I think both mine and Mike's company was struggling for a long time, and that unfortunately tends to create some toxicity, whether you like it or not, if it goes on for too long. So celebrating those small wins, but not being satisfied with them, still pointing out into the bleachers.
Maybe last question before we open it up, and I realize I'm opening myself up to ridicule and asking this, but maybe you could talk about ideal board composition, number, types of people, in all seriousness, because recognizing you did inherit a board, but like as you look to evolve it and make sure you have the right people on it, just curious, what that looks like from your perspective.
Well, I do feel in this case, Neil, you're opening yourself up to not self-ridicule, but compliments in this case. So as Neil knows,
I'm really not. This could be the most cruel review ever.
So the Strava board was reformed by virtue of me coming in, or reformulated by virtue of me coming into the role, and went from one that was frankly just way too large, with too much variety in terms of perspectives on the business and its potential. So it was like 11 people, I believe it was the number, to a smaller 5-person board that was populated by people who all had long-term faith and confidence that if the right things were done, Strava could deliver against its mission. At that moment, Neil chose to come back onto the board and take one of those places, which is why I suggested he was setting himself up for a compliment here. But I will say, not only is the board smaller and more aligned in their perspective on the business, that alignment also has allowed for a very strong dynamic between the board, myself included, but then also between the board and the management team, which frankly, when I joined, the relationship between the management team and the board was, I would just say, dysfunctional. And a lot of care had to be deployed to rebuild that. I think on both sides, what needed to happen was on the management side, they needed to shift out of a mode of trying to pitch and market and spin to the board about why they were doing was great, why it was great, even if it wasn't delivering the returns that were expected, and into transparency and data and frankness about what was working and what wasn't working. And then from a board perspective, that allowed them to evolve into what I would consider the more traditional and effective board perspective, which is one of oversight and appropriate challenging and questioning to make sure that the work is being done in the way that it should be and the returns are coming from the investments that were made. And that's been the way that it's been working, and I think we're working pretty well. So thank you, Neil, for being a effective member of the board.
No, and thank you for being a catalyst for change. Yeah, we needed that catalyst for change. So thank you.
Now for a contrarian. It's interesting. I would say I spent the vast majority of my time on board dynamics before joining LegalZoom as CEO, in part because I had so much trouble in my past companies managing my board as a CEO. The reality, putting aside LegalZoom, but I'll come back to it. The reality is what you're looking for in a board depends on the type of company. or I should say the type of entity, because, I sit on the board of the Natural History Museum and the board of trustees at Tufts University. Those are very large, lethargic boards designed really to slow the organizations down, and they're yeah, maybe less so at Yale. But when you think about those as kind of the more staid entities, right? The flip side are the earliest stage businesses. You want boards that are propelling you and pushing you forward and are able to create kind of that energy and excitement. And then, in the middle, once a company is established and stable, you become a little bit more risk averse, more risk tolerant than, an academic institution, but still more risk averse. So your boards should change and evolve over time. I've seen three types of boards. I hope for the one in the middle because it's the best you can hope for. The one in the middle is a neutral board that does next to nothing. You can find those, I think, about 15% of the time. The reason you hope for those is because 80% of the time you have a board that is negative and is toxic, and is, either at the wrong stage, or you've got a wrong person that dominates the conversation, and tends to be pretty deleterious to the actual business. And then maybe 5% of the time you get a really well-functioning, healthy board that is supportive of leadership. I find that to be really, really rare. I've yet to have a board meeting that I've ever gone to, and I'm including when I'm on a board, that served much value. You tend to just be checking boxes. So for me, I try to stack my board with people who I enjoy spending time with, and who don't mind me one-on-one bugging the heck out of them as I'm running through ideas and strategies and tactics. And those for me are the most important quote unquote boards. I say quote unquote boards because when they get together as a board, I can only hope for them to be neutral. A lot of times they're toxic, but when I'm talking to them as individual board members, they're incredibly valuable. They are my mentors, they're my advisors, they're my guide, my guides, and they give me my guardrails. And and they're instrumental there. And then we come to the board meeting and we just do the perfunctory review, typically, for better or worse.
Yeah, love it. Great. I think we have time for maybe one question.
1 minute.
Yeah, 1 minute question.
Going right here to the awards ceremony.
All right.
A question, but not an answer.
Yeah. I think you
So, it's interesting to note that there was a lot of I talk, and in terms of growth and change, it's so important who your management team is. I say this as someone who was part of the leadership team who went to an IPO, president of a company that was acquired by Fortune 500 and managed through all of that, the change in acquisition and the change management. And so I just think it would be useful to hear you all talk a little bit about the we. What is the management team? What are the structures that you need to put in place? What kinds of things you need to ask them to measure? And how do you assess while also making sure there's a healthy culture of shared vision, shared leadership? Would love to hear some thoughts on that.
You guys hear that okay? Yeah, quick, maybe 30 seconds each, as it turns out.
I mean, look, I think what you're trying to do, again, when you're coming into a large organization, it's incredibly disruptive. So all eyes are on the new person coming in. By the way, whether that's at the C level, whether that's a new chairman, or an executive member. So what you are doing with, as an individual is you're trying to create a situation where you allow people to come bottoms up with real tangible ideas that fit within the framework of what can be successful for a company. So what you should be doing is asking a lot of questions, not providing a lot of answers. And then your team should be going off and looking for those answers, together with, with other members. So it is very much collaborative and collegial, but make no mistake, if you're coming into a large organization and you're new and you're going to be a disruptor, whether you like it or not.
And similar to Jeff's response, it is the team that has delivered the results here. There's no question about that whatsoever. My role was just making sure that the people in the seats were the best possible candidates for those roles, especially for where Strava needed to go in the future. And then once I get them into once I recruit them into that role, just making sure that they're supported and empowered to do that job, as Jeff said, to make the actual decisions. It's not for me to do that. That's actually would be a waste of my time, let alone theirs.
Awesome. Well, I think we're up on time. Jeff and Mike, huge thanks for making yourself available.